And here we are back in the shop again. I was going to do a little bit of work to this BSA today. It's a Monday evening, by the way, but I never got around to doing any of this work because I wound up doing a little bit of work in that old bathroom that I'm converting into a walk-in closet. So first thing I got to do to this is get that gas tank off. So there's a strap goes underneath of it, right underneath here, that holds the reflectors and all that neat little stuff on there, and then take the bolt out of the center right here and flick the hoses off the petcocks and just get that tank off and get going here. Meanwhile, I'll give you a quick little look at what I did in the house today. There I am, done. That's the first coat sanded down. Hopefully, it'll only be one more to do. Anyway, I think I managed to keep the rest of the house pretty clean with that little zipper door and the fan in the window. So, anyway, we'll see what the boss says when she comes home. Well, I'm glad that dirty, dusty job has got the worst over with. Anyway, that was the first coat of drywall mud or compound, whatever you want to call it, in that room. I just went back in there today and just put a second coat on, but I didn't have to do everything, just a few spots here and there. So that, when I sand that off, that should be it for that little room. Anyway, as you can see, we've got a beautiful day out here. Got a gentle breeze blowing from the northwest there. It's about 22 degrees in the sunshine. And it's actually only about 50% humidity. That's about as dry as it ever gets around here. So it is a lovely day. Anyway, now that the chores are done, the lawn's mowed and all that stuff, it's time to get in here and get going with the fine tuning on this bike. As you can see, I've removed the gas tank. It's sitting over there on top of the parts washer. So I'm going to relieve that bolt from its location so that doesn't fall down and get lost in the nether world that exists out here. When I drop things, they just disappear in the junk and I never find them again. Anyway, I'm going to pop the tops off of those carburetors, make some changes to the way this adjuster's in there, because as you can see, that adjuster right there, as I mentioned before, the other one still has some adjustment left on it. This one doesn't. I think these cables were probably fiddled with or made by hand. Anyway, I'll show you those when I get these slides out of there. Meanwhile, I'll put this camera in the tripod and just put it on pause for now. Okay. Top of that mixing chamber off. So these mixing chamber tops right here, these were the ones that were on those Wassel carburetors that were on the bike that Mike brought it here. So there's no reason why I would want to ever change them. They're perfectly good, and those Wassel carbs, frankly, are as close to an exact copy of a Amel as you could get. Now, this is how I get things apart with this. I just roll the spring up like that, push the needle out like so. That's in the center notch. Now, when I took those apart, I found them in the lower notch, which was a higher setting. But right now, I want to get the cable right out of there. And I'm just going to set these things up on the seat for now. What I'm going to do is, I could machine that nut down about half the thickness and get myself a little more. Or I could machine some off that part of the adjuster nut. But I think what I'm going to do is just take the lock nut right off of there completely. because it really doesn't need to be there. And I can just use a bit of thread lock on the threads to keep that from unscrewing or changing its setting once it's set. So I'm just going to get a little wrench and pull that out of there. Actually, there happens to be an adjustable right there. It's dirty and greasy, but it will do the trick. So yeah, just going to screw that out. Oh yeah, it's stuck on there. I'm going to have to put that in a vise to get it out, so I'm just going to put you back on pause for a second, and then I'll be back. Alright, that didn't take much. Just loosen that nut off of there. Anyway, I'm taking the nut right off. As I mentioned, I'm going to put some thread locking compound on that adjuster screw. But for now, I'm just going to set it in there like that. And put that little nut down in the tray. I don't need that anymore right now, but I wanted to adjust the needle settings because the machine was gasping when you gave it throttle, so it was on the lower notch there, which would be on the highest needle setting. So I'll put it back on the lower notch. It was there for a reason, I guess. So anyway, I will get ready first to put my cable through here. Cover goes on first, then the spring. Oh, make sure the spring goes up through the middle of that, or the cable goes up through the middle of that spring. Then I get my fat head down there, and I look for the cable, pass it through the hole where the needle goes through, and then set it in the notch where it belongs. Then I squeeze the spring up there like that again. Take my needle, double check, make sure that's in the notch I wanted. Put that down into the slide. Drop the spring back into place. Offer the slide back up to the carburetor. If you ever have trouble with these going in, like right around there, the needle will sometimes hit the emulsion tube there, the jet needle, or the needle, the needle jet. Yeah. Anyway, so get that in there. If you have to do any fiddling to get that in, it's not unusual. So just be patient. Whoops, blowing on the horn now. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to get the screws. Ouch! Jeez, I hit the end of the handlebar with my shoulder. Alright, going to put the screws back in the cap there. You don't need to watch that. So I'll get that done. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the carburetor over there on the right hand side. Okay, I got to apologize because I have completely lost a couple of videos. They didn't even record to the camera. Anyway, what I did was I took the tops off the mixing chambers. I brought the needles into the highest position, which is where they were before when they originally started off. And I removed the little lock nut from the cable adjuster right there. What I will do after I get these all set up, I will put a little drop of Loctite on those threads. That will keep them from going out of adjustment, and yes, it will keep them from going out of adjustment. So what else did I do while I was at it? I moved the cable. I had the cable on one side going up through that hole in the frame down to the other carburetor, but it was causing problems with the seating of the cables into the splitter box there. So what I did is I just brought both cables underneath the frame so there's no more interference there. There's another thing that kind of bothers me about this, and I know some people are going to say it's right. I mean, cable goes through this little rubber grommet on the headlight here and then in behind, and it keeps everything nice and neat and pretty looking. But When I'm doing my bikes, I like to let that cable just run loose and free out behind the forks and let it kind of dangle in the wind. I don't like, tucking things away like that, because it tends to cause places where cables can get stiff and that sort of thing. Anyway, to each his own. That's through there right now. I've got some tape over that weird little furled end that's on there, so that if that ever gets really loose, that it can't fall out. It's got tape around it to keep it from falling off the cable. So anyhow, it's time for me to light this up and see if I can't get these carburetors synchronized a little bit better than they are. And hopefully with that adjustment to the jet needle, I will get a better throttle response, because it wasn't responding well to the throttle. Like when you crack the throttle open, it would gasp and then speed up. But I'm hoping that changing those needles to a higher setting will give her enough fuel so she doesn't gasp like that when you give it to her. So anyway, I guess the thing to do would be to put this camera back in the tripod and see if I can record another run-up. Okay, let's do another start on this machine. And see if we can get these carbs dialed in a little better. It's already primed, so it should start up. It doesn't seem to be running on the left cylinder this time. Curiouser and curiouser. Let's try it again. All right. Okay, that seems to be running pretty decent there now. I'm going to do a proper balance job on it. I'll just run it on one side at a time, and then I'll make sure the carburetor slides are opening at the same time. So I'm going to shut her off for now, and I'll run her up later on. Get her do a proper balance, but feeling behind the pipes right now, both cylinders seem to be kicking out about the same amount, so that's good. Well, sometimes I'm a little bit stubborn, but sometimes it works out. Anyway, these carbs should be working really well. Got the idle down to about 5 RPM there. Nicely balanced out. Well, if you look at the name on those carburetors, that was the carburetors that came along with the bike. After getting those AML ones all sorted out and running half decent, the only problem is I couldn't get the idle down below about 1400 RPM because they're that worn out. So anyway, I decided, well, these are much newer carburetors. Why don't I give these a shot again? So anyway, I took them all apart again, cleaned everything up. I did find that the float bowls on both of them were warped, and that was allowing a little bit of an air leak right about here, along there, going into the pilot circuit. Plus the needles that were in the Wassel carburetors, they were about 1/8 of an inch too long. So what I had to do was simply replace them with another set of needles from an AML carburetor that are about 1/16 of an inch shorter on the tip, because what was going on was the screw was going in so far that it was stopping the flow of fuel and not just controlling the flow of air through the carburetor. So between all that stuff of, filing the flanges smooth and lapping them down on the drill press table and that, and lapping those float bowls, I think I finally got the darn thing running good. So I think that I'm going to put the gas tank back on this bike, and tomorrow morning it should be ready for a ride. And the shadows are getting long, sun's going down. There's the boss out there finishing up her gardening for the night, but this has been a really nice day. I think the temperature got up to about 25 degrees, but the humidity was low. There was a gentle breeze blowing just to keep you, from getting too sweaty if you were working outside. And now, after a lot of fiddling around, I finally got those Wassel carburetors working properly. So if you have trouble tuning the pilot side of a set of Wassel carburetors, take a good look at those little air screws, because they're just a little bit too long on that tapered section. Like, I'm pretty sure if I had filed off about 1/16 of an inch from the tip, come on, focus there, from the tip of those screws, they probably would have worked. But like I said, they're going in so far that they're choking off the fuel supply going to the engine as well as the air. So if you run into problems with the Wassel carb, that might be your issue. But again, check to make sure all your surfaces are flat and that you don't have air leaks either internal with the carburetor or between the carburetor and the manifold. So next thing to do, like I said, put the gas tank on. That'll be tomorrow's little job, and we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know. Now, before I call it a night, I just wanted to show you the difference between the AML pilot screw and the Wassel pilot screw. Now, the Wassel is pretty much an exact copy of the AML carburetor, and in just about every way. But as you can see, the screw on the left, which is the ammo one, is quite a bit shorter than the screw on the right. The taper is actually longer on the screw on the right. That's the wassail line. It was going too far into the carburetor and actually throttling off the fuel. So if you ever have troubles, try an ammo air screw in your carburetor. See if it makes a difference, because it sure made a difference with these ones. Well, there's one more thing I wanted to mention before I take this out on a drive. That's anytime you are putting a bike on the road for that first maiden voyage, go over all the, especially the important nuts and bolts like brake anchors, fender mounts, that sort of thing, to make sure the machine isn't going to fall apart. Axle nuts, you know, engine, did I say engine mounts? Yeah, that sort of thing. And, you know, axle nuts, that, all that kind of stuff. Make sure the bike is actually together properly. I found a lot of small nuts and bolts on this that were only just a little more than hand tight. So you know, I got probably a half a turn on most of those smaller ones. And then when I thought I was almost done, I saw this, and that is as loose as a goose. That's the brake anchor that goes to the swing arm for the back brake. If that had fallen off when I put the back brake on, that whole drum would have moved around and, you know, locked up the back wheel. Caused all kinds of happy little things to happen. Anyway, like I say, if you're putting a bike on the road for the first time, just go over everything, make sure all the nuts and bolts are tight, and that, you know, I always joke about stuff falling off of a bike, but you don't want stuff to fall off a bike. Well, that's back from the first test ride. I gotta say, it worked pretty good. I think I'm going to pull the plugs out and read them, see how the engine is responding to the carburetor settings, but it feels, like I said, pretty darn good. I don't like that those that those fuel filters aren't full of fuel after that drive, so I think that I'm just going to take them out. There are already filters in the petcocks and in the carburetor banjos as well, so it doesn't need a third filter in there anyway. So I think I'm going to take those out. Okay, well, that worked out pretty good. For a second test drive, I took it about twice as far as I did the first time. So, I don't know, I think there's probably about 20 miles on it right now. But, I need to make an adjustment to the brake lever because the lever's hitting the engine before I get full brakes on the back wheel. That's just a quick and easy thing. Check out the horn. It only blows when it wants to. It must want to now. Anyway, but I should check that switch out. It doesn't seem to be quite right. It might have got dirty from sitting there for who knows how many years that's been sitting there, not being used. But anyway, I also need to take the exhaust off and try to weld that kickstand lug back onto the frame again. Hopefully I'll be successful doing that, because it is awful nice to have a side stand on a motorcycle. Other than that, I mean, it works well. It handles well. It does everything a BSA should. So, you know, as far as the engine and the carbs go, I think I've got it. So it's just a few more little things to work out, and a few more miles to put on it before I turn it back over to Mike. But I think he's going to have a pretty usable bike here. Plus, it's pretty. I really like that candy burgundy on there. It really looks nice out in the sunshine. All right, well, in the interest of not letting these videos get too long, I think I'm going to call that it for this week. Next week we will, as I mentioned, get into removing that exhaust there and see if I can manage to weld that side stand back on. And meanwhile, I'll keep on driving it, get some miles on it for Mike, make sure it's working as good as I think it is anyways. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, and be good to each other.